for tuning in. I'm Jeff Merritt, and you're watching Cox Connections only on Cox 9. The Heroin Task Force was born out of a need to address the rising number of deaths from heroin overdose. Its mission is to bring awareness to the epidemic. In the summer of 2015, the task force partnered with Roanoke Valley Television, RVTV 3, and created 5 public service announcements that were targeted to specific audiences and had 2 numbers that the community could immediately contact. Here are a look at 2 of those PSAs.
In kindergarten, they ask you what you want to be when you grow up. And, you know, the kid next to me raises his hand, he wants to be a doctor. You know, so the other kid raises his hand, he wants to be a lawyer. You know, I raised my hand, I wanted to be a baseball player. But there was nobody in that class that raised their hand and said, I want to be a drug addict. And, you know, I couldn't control what I was doing at the time. And I left the field and I was just in tears.
People who are using heroin are not the typical destitute, marginalized persons, homeless in our society. This is not the profile of the typical heroin user today. Today, the typical heroin user is your neighbor next door. It is the young person who's going to high school. It is the young professional, and it is a growing problem.
Joining me in the studio is Tom Bowers, the Heroin Task Force Committee Chair, and Elaine Bays-Murphy with RVTV. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having us today. I mean, this is definitely an issue that we need to be getting out to the public.
So let's talk about this. Obviously, these public service announcements are very compelling. They definitely hit at the heart of this issue. We're talking about awareness here, and why is awareness so important?
Well, awareness is important because this is a new, it's not a new drug. Heroin's been around for years and years, but it is a new situation we have. In the past, the gateway to drugs has always been marijuana and going up through into other drugs. Now we see with heroin, it is different. We have a situation where most people who are on heroin, some of them may have come up through the traditional drugs, but most of them are people who had had a car wreck, have had some major surgery, had teeth removed, and were put on some type of prescription drugs, and usually oxycodone, Percocet, something to take away that pain. When that pain is, when that need is gone as determined by a doctor, then the dependence may still be there. And unfortunately, that is where that link up through prescription drugs into heroin is something we've never seen before. And so that is where Valley law enforcement wants to look at it and say, you know, this is where we need to make people aware of this, because it's not the typical route to drug usage.
And why heroin versus other drugs? What is it about heroin that makes it either accessible or so much more widespread now?
Heroin is an opiate, and that's what the drugs that they're given for pain are opiates as well. And so it is a similar type of drug. And then just like any other supply and demand issue, heroin dealers and heroin suppliers have caught on to this, or they saw it coming, or they planned it. I don't know the answer, but they saw the need, and then they have ramped up the availability of it, obviously, which has driven down the cost, which compared to prescription medication on the black market, heroin is much cheaper. Well,
this awareness campaign that you have is certainly making an impact. Elaine, 5 different PSAs that you've put together, very compelling. What can you tell us about putting those together?
Well, we went into the production without a script, which was interesting. So we spoke to 5 different individuals, and out of that, 5 different messages came out of each interview. One talks about what Tom just mentioned, who is using. It's not, it could be your neighbor, it could be anyone, you know. How dangerous is heroin? You know, what does heroin take? One of the PSAs referenced to, you know, it will steal your dreams. So I think the creativity and the power of the PSAs came across just very naturally.
Right. It was a very honest look at those people who were impacted, either personally impacted or had seen this, whether it be through the judicial system or other.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's those obviously are very compelling, and this is obviously said to be truly an epidemic. Tom, now one of the things that makes this so dangerous, and we're seeing a number of deaths. I mean, we've seen a number this year already in Roanoke. Has to do with the purity of the drug. Explain to us what that means.
Well, and what we've seen is purity kind of ranges anywhere from 15% purity up to 55, 60% purity. And obviously it could go up to 100%, I guess. But what you're seeing is where someone who may be using heroin and their dealer may one time get 15% purity heroin, next time it may be a 40% or a 55%. There's no marking on it as saying 15%. It's not like you're going and getting an oxycodone that has a guaranteed amount of milligram of purity.
Right.
So you're getting a different amount, which will take you up and down, and we believe that the dealers will also use that as part of their marketing. Part of their goal to make you dependent on it would be to give you a different set of purity. And then, of course, if your body is used to a lower purity, and all of a sudden you get through either from your dealer or from a friend who has it or whatever, a higher purity, that is when we see that the body is zapped and it affects the heart, and then we have the overdoses. Some of the overdoses are from an increased quantity of use, but a lot of them are because they're getting a different level of purity and their body is not able to handle it, and then they go into overdose. They're basically deceased except for we now have another drug called Narcan, which law enforcement has and emergency medical people have, which pretty much bring people back to life. And hopefully when those happen, those people are given a second chance and will realize they've got to do something to get off this.
Right. Well, we certainly don't want people to rely on that, and that's the whole point of this whole campaign, that this awareness campaign that you have, is to recognize the signs of this. Elaine, I think that's in fact one of your spots tells people kind of what to look out for.
It does. Like I say, the spots, they just kind of fell into place with the message. What are the signs? Who is using? What does it steal? How dangerous is this? And the spots are being distributed across social media throughout Virginia. Obviously, they're running on RVTV3 and other channels. And Tom and the task force has already seen that they are making a difference, that people are responding to the PSAs, that they are getting calls. So that says something in itself. And
those calls are of what nature? I mean, people who want to get help themselves, and or they know a loved one, a friend, a family member?
All.
Right. That's great.
Across the board.
That's great awareness, because obviously this awareness campaign is really about saving lives. And as you mentioned, Tom, in many cases, these folks may be even early time users. I mean, their body hasn't necessarily adjusted to this drug. Correct.
Sometimes you do get that first time user, and that person may overdose because of that. But I think the other thing we want to make sure people are aware of is that the collateral damage. Right. This is not just the drug user. This is the impact that it has on family members, on children. And we have cases, and my full-time job is Commonwealth Attorney for the City of Salem, and we have cases where we know that drug usage relates to so many more things. It relates to domestic violence. It relates to breaking and enterings and burglaries and larcenies, because people are feeding that need for that drug. So so much of our crime is related to drugs, and now we have a situation where the stereotypical drug usage has now been expanded greatly through the prescription medication, and now is in suburbia. It's not just an inner city crime.
Sure.
It not just an inner city problem. It is throughout our area.
Yeah, it's impacting everyone. Well, thank you both for joining us today.
Well, thank you for making this such an important part of our community.
Absolutely. You can view all 5 PSAs at the RVTV3 Facebook page. And for more information on heroin addiction and prevention, visit the RASAC website and the Prevention Council of Roanoke County website. Before you go, I want to personally thank you for choosing Cox Communications for your entertainment, information, and communication needs. We know you could have chosen another provider, but because you choose us, we promise to provide you with quality products backed up by a talented local team of professionals. I'm Jeff Merritt, and we'll see you next time on Cox Connections.